In the early 90s, 2D games were at their peak, but in the late 90s, an entirely new dimension of gaming became fully possible. It was around this time that every character had to make the jump from 2D to 3D. The new dimension completely changed gaming forever, and it's because of games like Super Mario 64 that gave us the template as to how games should feel and play in 3D. Sonic, of course, had a rough transition to 3D. Look, I'm not even gonna make a joke about how everyone says this. There's already a ton of other jokes that have been used. I'm just gonna call it how it is. Sonic had a rough transition to 3D. Mario 64 took roughly 3 years to create, with a lot of that time going into how Mario felt to control. On the contrary, Sonic Adventure, Sonic's first plunge into 3D, was developed in 10 months, with a lot of that time being spread across different characters. So keep that in mind for this discussion. For this video, I'll be talking about Sonic only in the gameplay section as to streamline the video. Sonic Adventure, to some extent, was a tech demo. It was partly created to advertise what the Dreamcast could do. Sonic's gameplay, however, was what I feel Sega truly had in mind when bringing Sonic into the third dimension. It explains why his gameplay style is the only one that reoccurs to some extent until around Sonic 06. This video will also be different from my other videos. Where I had almost no prior experience with the classic Sonic and Mario games, I have a ton of experience with these two games thanks to Sonic Adventure DX on the GameCube and Super Mario 64 on the DS. Although I will show my creator bias and tell you I have a fair amount more experience with Sonic Adventure DX than I do with Mario 64. I'll be playing Sonic Adventure DX on the PC through Steam with some texture mods to emulate the Dreamcast lighting, and I'll be playing on the PC port of Mario 64. Both will be played using a Nintendo Switch Pro controller. I don't want to spend too much time here because Mario's section, as you would imagine, is extremely brief. So anyways, the nature theme in Sonic is at its apex in this game. You free the animals as usual, but now you can collect these animals and use them to level up your own cute virtual pet. Sonic not only frees animals, but he nurtures them. And I think that's very thematically appropriate. The narrative has a layer of mythos that felt really organic, naturally tying the mysterious Chaos Emeralds to the Echidna tribe. The only problem with the narrative theming, and yes, I'm one of those guys, is how Sonic is in the real human world. I want to clarify before I move on that I have no problem with the idea of Sonic being in the real world. I loved the Sonic movie and that was in the real world. But what separates the movie and Sonic Adventure for me is how there's no self-awareness. The people never acknowledge the fact that it's not normal for a talking blue hedgehog to exist. It's treated as though it's a normal, natural part of the world. This is why I find Sonic in the real world to be extremely jarring, but not any other cartoon character. This is especially apparent in Sonic 06, where Sonic kisses a human and no one comments on how weird it is that an anthropomorphic hedgehog just got kissed by a human. I understand Eggman is a human, if only by definition, but these characters look way too cartoony for this realistic setting. I will say that I don't mind if they look like how they did in Sonic Unleashed though. They at least match Sonic's cartooniness. The actual story is charming enough, but is bogged down by multiple playthroughs going through similar events. The actual narrative is good, but the way the story is presented is kind of weak. I'm not going to talk about the Mario 64 narrative because there's nothing to talk about. The new world that Mario can run and jump around in is fascinating. So fascinating, in fact, that I would probably need another video to fully explain why Peach's Castle is amazing and functions perfectly as a hub world introducing the player to the new dimension, but that's not relevant to the story. Which, by the way, doesn't exist in this game. Overall, for story, I'm gonna give Sonic Adventure a 3.5 out of 5 and Mario a 2 out of 5. Generally, the levels in Sonic Adventure's Sonic campaign focus on getting him from point A to point B. Mario's, conversely, focuses on exploring as much of the map as possible. This is weird because Sonic in 2D was far more layered and encouraged exploration, and Mario was much more about precise platforming. In 3D, the roles have been reversed. This makes Sonic's campaign, by necessity, far more short. This is only exacerbated by Sonic's gotta go fast philosophy. To create a campaign with substance, you will either need an absurd amount of levels and environments, or some reason to replay those levels and environments. Mario 64 does the latter effortlessly, and Sonic Adventure does neither, resulting in a much more short campaign. This isn't an insult, but just an important comparison to make. In terms of how Sonic feels, well, it's weird. It's very hard for the game to accommodate speed, platforming, and momentum. In 1998, the 3D era was still in its infancy, and Sonic had a lot of problems. Sonic feels fine, even good to control while moving slow. But when he goes fast, he's extremely slippery and unhinged. Sonic has a really good base, but there's still a lot of work that needs to be done. There's some cool spin dash jumps you can take to make shortcuts, and because of this, speedruns feel really loose like they were in the classic games. Sonic does have a good sense of weight and inertia, but the spin dash breaks any sort of pace and fluidity the game otherwise would have had. They tried to take the appeal of classic Sonic and apply it to 3D, which makes sense and is the right take, but I feel like the technology wasn't matured to the point where this could have been done. And this is no more apparent than when Sonic interacts with loops. Before, loops were a challenge, something that you needed to overcome. Now it's automated. And looking at the beta stage, they tried to make the loops work like they did in the classics, but the engine couldn't do it. So that's why I think this game doesn't emulate the Genesis perfectly. The technology and the engine that they were running on just weren't capable of doing it. The homing attack is controversial, and I can understand why. What it does is it makes every enemy encounter the same. In the classics, there were some enemies that were only able to be taken down by rolling, some by jumping, and some by using the insta-shield. There was a layer of depth and precision. The homing attack sucks all that nuance out. Now, I want to be clear that I do believe the homing attack is necessary, but the way it's implemented right now leaves a lot to be desired. It's extremely repetitive and completely kills your momentum. This is why I would imagine that the lightspeed dash attack was introduced. They wanted to spice up the combat in some way. It doesn't help the problem because it's painfully slow, but the point still stands that that's probably why they added it. Sonic Adventure has really open levels, and open levels by necessity give you more room to fail, making the game relatively easy. It also doesn't help that the ring system makes taking damage pretty inconsequential. The level design is technically loose, but it's also very rigid. What I mean by this is that the levels are open, which is nice, but whenever you're forced into a scripted sequence, the game instantly breaks the moment you try and do anything besides hold straight. I kind of just ignored this stuff when I was younger, but if you can, replay the game and try and just jump during scripted sequences, and you'll know what I mean. They don't want you to completely forfeit agency as to give you the illusion of control, but it just doesn't work. That's why they need so many speed panels to guide you. Sonic has always mixed substance and spectacle really well, but due to the engine, there's only really spectacle now, you can't fuse them together anymore. The game is full of these spectacle moments, but when you try and actually interact with these set pieces in a way the game doesn't want you to, it breaks. The game doesn't want you to jump during the whale section, it doesn't want you to interact with loops. Again, the classics had these spectacle moments as well, but they always felt more robust and organic. These just feel like lifeless scripts, and it's because the game isn't confident enough in its controls to let you play half the time. And it really shouldn't be. Sonic Adventure being an open game without special stages and a playable Super Sonic in levels means that there's far less reason to explore. In Sonic 3 and Knuckles, the giant rings led to special stages. This let you get the true ending and also broke the game via Super Sonic. So you were incentivized to explore and look for them. Even when you had Super Sonic unlocked, it's still worth looking for them because they could grant you 50 rings, which is incredibly useful. Without that, we're just down to extra lives, rings, and maybe a shield. This isn't worth it. It just gives you a little aha moment, and then you move on. It doesn't make the stages satisfying. Sonic Adventure has terrible collision. The game is really held together by tape and glue. This is really clear in the Lost World Snake section. I promise you I'm not moving the joystick, but Sonic keeps jerking around. It's another point added to how this game has a lot of style, but very little substance. As mentioned before, the engine in this game clearly isn't built for loops or complex terrain. This makes Sonic's gameplay much less flexible. For example, he can't interact with hills the way he used to. Now, I mentioned how the game relies on spectacle a lot, but it also relies on gimmicks. There's a lot of gimmicks and minigames, whether that be the snowboard and ice cap, or the entire casino level. There just isn't enough substance in this game with the game mechanics and the game engine and the level design that allow truly rich game design. The closest we get to there are Speed Highway and Red Mountain, which are very good levels, mind you. But the Casino, Ice Cap, Lost World, Twinkle Park all have these gimmicks that feel really out of place. Sonic has always had a ton of gimmicks. I talked about this in my first video, but those gimmicks were at least associated with the game mechanics. Springs and bumpers felt like organic assets to the levels. They also weren't minigames that you had to suddenly get used to. It doesn't help that Sonic Adventure has some of the most ambitious levels I've ever seen. There's always multiple acts to a single level, and it's very dramatic. It really helps the game feel like an adventure in that regard. In Windy Hill, you're pacing the serene meadows until a tornado hits. You're suddenly inside the tornado, racing to the top. When you break out, the triumphant soundtrack kicks in. In Red Mountain, you're scaling, well, a mountain. You go inside the mountain and come out reaching the peak. Then suddenly, Tails appears and you hitch a ride with him. The game constantly makes you feel as though you're in an environment, not just a route. The game ought to be commended for being so bold with how it seamlessly weaves in so many gameplay styles, and how it makes each level feel like its own adventure. The only thing missing is Sonic snarking quippy one-liners when left idle. Last but not least, the camera is horrible. You're constantly fighting it, and you can't use the second joystick to control it. It's mapped to L and R. I understand the Dreamcast didn't have another analog, but every other console it's been ported to has, so I don't know why they haven't fixed this yet. Anyways, Sonic Adventure gets an 8 out of 15 for gameplay. I would be lying to you if I told you the game was good, but it clearly does have a solid blueprint to be a good game. Similar to what I said about Sonic 1. The gameplay isn't bad either, it's just okay, maybe slightly above average. The Sonic Adventure speed sections are but a semblance, a small fracture of what that hypothetical great game could be. There was surely a lot of thought that went into the way Mario feels when transitioning into 3D. It has a hub world, which provides safe grounds for you to get used to the controls. Sonic Adventure had this too, but it was far less spacious because the hubs also serve as a means to access the other levels, so you can't spread things out too much. This works well with how the game is set up. Once you get in the castle, it's still pretty open. The game isn't about going from point A to point B like Sonic Adventure. It's an open world where you complete different objectives. Not to mention there's all sorts of nooks and crannies throughout the castle that are essential to helping you progress through the world. Being the industry's first major leap into the third dimension, Miyamoto knew the players wanted to explore as much of the new world as possible, so he compensated. Super Mario 64 stands to this day as one of the only 3D platform sandbox style games, so having loose objectives in an open world works better. It also lets them better focus their resources as they don't have to create multiple levels. They can create big levels with multiple objectives. When the game is open and focuses on progressing you from point A to point B, the game can feel aimless. I noticed this problem when I played the fantastic fan game demo Sonic Utopia. I think that a game this open would benefit from a Mario 64 type mission system instead of a set goal. Let's talk about Mario specifically. Mario no longer has power-ups, at least in the traditional sense, but instead he has a health bar. Mario also gets a triple jump, a punch, and a side flip. The side flip is an amazing addition. They probably realized that turning around while jumping would be extremely awkward, so they made an entirely new jump for it, and it works great. The triple jump adds a new dynamic to platforming and gives skilled players more agency in how they ought to traverse levels. Same can be applied to the long jump. No, I won't be talking about the backwards long jump as that was unintended, but I did make a video referencing why it works so well in a previous video of mine if you're interested. I will say that the combat attacks feel kind of underwhelming, and they're not particularly useful either, so it's I do wish that there were separate buttons for punching and sliding though. If you're running full speed you'll slide, but if you're not you'll punch, and it's hard to gauge which one you're gonna do sometimes. Mario can also grab onto ledges as they realize platforming can't be as precise in 3D as there's far more room to fail. This has implications on the game design too, but I'll speak more about that when we get there. The new power-ups Mario does have are interesting. They're meant to affect how Mario interacts with the environment. They aren't a temporary optional accessory in order to beat the game. That's why they're on timers and not lost when hit. The only problem with this movement is the wall jumping. It feels flat. The timing isn't super strict, but the implementation is still really flimsy, especially when compared to the later 3D Mario games. Nevertheless, changing the status quo and making Mario a parkour stuntman proves to be very effective in showcasing how games could be played in 3D. Mario has no P speed, just a consistent speed, which is fine. You may think this would cause problems with the larger levels, but the levels seem to be tight enough to where this isn't really a problem. Because of this, I find it rare that you'll ever feel like you're going slow. There is a lot of backtracking you have to do if you mess up, but there's a lot of cannons that can help you and the long jump is really useful. The game does feel a little bit stiff compared to what we have now, but nevertheless, Nintendo translated Mario's gameplay beautifully into 3D. Later games, specifically Mario 3D World, would attempt to directly translate the classic gameplay into 3D, but personally, what I think they did here was better. They acknowledged the differences between 3D and 2D and accommodated. As discussed with Sonic Adventure, the more you open up a level, the easier it gets. Sonic Adventure had this problem in the later levels. It felt really easy because there was a lot of room to mess up. In Mario 64, despite having looser objectives, it manages to simultaneously have tight level design towards the end. I wouldn't say this game was hard, but I definitely felt a better difficulty curve. Mario 64 is the perfect mix of platforming, problem solving, and exploration. It's truly a feat that ought to be commended. If I did have one critique, it's that the less open levels there's quite a bit of waiting sometimes. Oftentimes you can circumvent this through skillful use of Mario's tools, but sometimes it just feels unavoidable. I could probably make an entirely new video on this, but I want to acknowledge how nearly every new level takes something new the third dimension offers and expands on it in a meaningful way. We have open levels, tight levels, maze levels, auto-scrollers, and much more. It goes to show how much they really cared and thought things through to make sure the game was perfect before releasing. In many worlds, there's an obvious objective to complete. Go from point A to point B. For the first world, we have Koopa the Quick, for example. This shows that despite being open-ended, clear goals can be defined in 3D. The wet-dry world requires you to understand the 3D space in order to understand how to acquire the stars. There's ambiguous objectives like the Big Boo's Haunt showing us how you can better hide objectives in 3D. There's boss battles like King Babomb. Precise platforming missions like a lot of them in Tick-Tock Clock. Hazy Maze has a mission specific to Metal Mario. Every level has a 100 coin and 8 red coin objective emphasizing exploration and mastery of space. This isn't to say that these are impossible to accomplish in 2D, but they work completely different in 3D. Compared to Sonic, Mario's movement is much more rich, and the game makes excellent use of it. I can't say the same for Sonic Adventure. In fairness, it's partly due to how many characters there are in that game. Mario 64 makes collecting all 120 stars feel like a serious journey and something you truly did deserve. Although I must preface that I only got 70 stars before making this video. Another thing that hasn't aged well in this game is the collision detection. It's not as bad as Sonic Adventure, not by a long shot, but it's something you notice. This is what helps the game with speedrunning, I'd imagine, but for a regular player it makes things a little bit problematic. Being a 3D platformer, sometimes the camera gets a bit janky, but I didn't really notice that too often. Only really in wet dry land. Another thing that feels weird is when you jump in one direction and try and turn around, you can't. You just kind of slow down a bit. I had this exact same problem in the original Mario Bros vs Sonic the Hedgehog video that I uploaded like 2 years ago. I don't know how else I'm supposed to explain it. It's not as bad in this game, but trust me, on the NES game it was extremely jarring. When you land after moving really fast, Mario kind of squirms around to get into the right position. That's kind of jarring to me. Falling from really high heights might limit the game design. I feel like it discourages some acrobatic potential. I understand it's supposed to add realism and tension, but I'd rather have the game just let me play and be the surreal masterpiece that it is. With tension especially, I feel like it relies on that a little bit too much. The water levels can feel a little bit empty, but I think the water stuff is actually pretty fine in this game. Once you get used to how to swim, it's actually pretty fun. much better than the 2D Mario games, plus you have a ton more freedom. Getting out of the water, however, does feel a little bit clunky. Sometimes when the enemies are too far away, they won't show up unless you get really close to them. I'm pretty sure that's a system limitation, but it is annoying. I don't think any of these are really major problems, but they are worth mentioning. Besides that, the game feels great. The levels are masterfully designed, and once mastered, the players can move around in very free and acrobatic ways. To get what I'm talking about, just watch a speedrunner maneuver around TikTok clock. It's crazy how Mario 64 has some really precise platforming, but still has a layer of freedom available to the players. Mario 64 is the poster boy that propelled gaming into the third dimension. This is exactly why. And with that, I'm gonna give Mario 64 a 14.5 out of 15 for gameplay. Nearly perfect. Sonic Adventure's music has a perfect mix of energy, rhythm, and ambience. The music can really get your heart pounding, yet also perfectly blend into the environment and tone of the stage. From the serene meadows of Windy Hill to the vigorous snowboarding music in Ice Cap. Sonic music switched from the jazzy instrumentals from the classics to now a radical rock. I love both of them. Now this may be my nostalgia speaking, but I like the rock tunes more overall. Mario's music isn't anything new for the plumber, but still solid nonetheless. They fit the mood and are genuine good tracks. To be honest, I don't really have much to say beyond that. Some of my personal favorites are the Jolly Snow Mountain, the calming Dire Dire Docks, and the triumphant Powerful Mario. Yes, it's called Powerful Mario. Sonic gets a 5 out of 5 and Mario gets a 4 out of 5. Sonic was made more tall as to better convey his movement in 3D. It's a subtle but welcome change. This might be my most unpopular Sonic opinion, but I actually really like the Sonic Adventure DX model, and I seriously think it's the best one that's ever been made. To be clear, I think that there's been better designs for Sonic, like for example Hess's Sonic in the Sonic Mania intro, but no, I will defend this as my favorite Sonic model. He's still kind of chubby, but not to the point of being cute, but he's also not lanky enough as to make him look too human. I know I'm in the minority when I say this, but this is truly what I think. Now when it comes to the lighting, yes, I agree, they make Sonic look way too glossy. That's why I like to play it with mods that emulate the Dreamcast textures. When I played the game, it was with the mods, but when evaluating the presentation, I won't be taking the mods into consideration. I'm looking at Sonic Adventure for how it is. Now with that being said, I still think it's the best Sonic model, but the lighting and textures are a little bit off. What I don't get is the eye color change. Yes, I'm going to be that guy who complains about Sonic's eye color. Okay, it's not like a big deal, but I do think it's random and it looks kind of weird. Granted, Sonic looks really glossy throughout the entire game, so I feel like the eye color just emphasizes that gloss more, because I don't find it nearly as bad with the modern Sonic games, which aren't as glossy. I think comparing these two images shows what I mean. Granted, the left side of Sonic looks a little bit muted, but the right side looks extremely saturated, and I feel like it accentuates his green eyes a lot. It may sound like I'm complaining about nothing, and I probably am to a lot of you, but I assure you that I'm not joking when I say this looks extremely jarring to me, at least in the artwork. In the game you don't really see his eyes that much, so it doesn't really bother me. The green eyes also make him look less determined and more stylistic. This isn't really a fault, but I'm just comparing the two designs right now, and Sonic looks more assured and confident in the left side than he does to the right side to me. Again, I love the modern Dreamcast Sonic design when it comes to his proportions, but his eye color just looks weird to me. Knuckles, Tails, and the rest of the characters I don't really have much to say on. I think that they also all look good. Tails having blue eyes is fitting as he is less confident than Sonic, because I think the blue eyes make him look more insecure. Knuckles looks great. The eye color being purple for him is fitting because he guards the Master Emerald, which is like a jewelry, and purple is the color of jewelry, so it makes sense. Coming back to Sonic, they changed his running animation, and I think it's alright. I prefer the classic Sonic's running style, but this change makes sense. The cutscenes are the cutscenes, and I'm sure you've heard about them a million times at this point. I really have nothing to add. It's probably nostalgia, but I don't find them as bad as most people. Mario in Mario 64 is in all of his low poly goodness. There's something about these models in this game that's so bad, it's good. Bowser looks derpy and Peach looks stupid, but it's all part of the charm. I'm not sure how to explain it, but I love this game and all of its visible polygons. I understand I'm comparing two different consoles, but to me, for presentation, Sonic gets a 3.5 out of 5, and Mario also gets a 3.5 out of 5. Last but not least, replay value and post-game. Sonic Adventure has the Chow, extra emblems, and multiplayer Chow stuff that I could theoretically do with my theoretical friends. The emblems are pretty fun to collect, and once you do, you unlock Metal Sonic, a new skin for Sonic. In Mario 64, after you collect the 70 stars and defeat Bowser for the third time, there's 50 more stars you can collect. After that, you can climb Peach's castle. There's even a Yoshi cameo and a ton of other little stuff. It's really sweet. Both games provide a lot of content for you after you beat the game. Both Mario 64 and Sonic Adventure get a 4 out of 5. If Mario 64 had, say, a Luigi skin, then it may have been 4.5 or 5 out of 5, depending on if Luigi plays different or if he's just a skin. Sonic Adventure has another skin, but it's Metal Sonic and he doesn't play any different. If we got, say, a playable Super Sonic, then this would have got 5 out of 5. Or if we had a really cool new location like we had in Sonic Adventure 2. Both games have absolutely phenomenal post-game, but they're just missing that last bit to really push it to 5 out of 5. When you add up all of the scores, Sonic Adventure gets 24, and Mario 64 gets 28. The story of Sonic Adventure versus Mario 64 is one of ambition versus precision. Mario 64 is definitely the better overall package, but it's important to note that aside from gameplay, which it won by a large margin, it didn't win anything else over Sonic Adventure. Granted, I put the gameplay as 3 times more important than everything else, which is really going to skew the results. But yeah, I still hold that Mario 64 is a better package than Sonic Adventure. Not to mention I was only counting Sonic's story, which is almost universally acknowledged to be the best one. This surely would have been a bigger lead if I counted all of the stories. And this brings me to a larger discussion on Mario and Sonic in general. For Sonic, he tries to be up in your face. He tries to be big and bombastic, so they take bold moves. We see this a lot in what is dubbed now as the Dark Ages of Sonic. Sega had a bunch of ideas. They threw everything at the wall to see if any of them would stick. And I think this is why people like myself love the character and love the series so much. There was clear ambition even if it was misguided. From an outsider looking in, the games were mediocre or just straight up bad. But for us Sonic fans, we knew what they were trying to do and we can appreciate it. We know that one day we will get an amazing game like Sonic Adventure 2 and Sonic Mania. The thing is that when Sonic hits, he hits. This isn't to say that Mario doesn't hit at its same level, but it's to say that Mario is just consistently good. Don't get me wrong, this is a good thing, and it makes him a lot easier to recommend. But this is to say that the appeal of Sonic games is something only Sonic fans can really understand. Sonic is also unique. He's a character that has to grow on you. I think that's part of the reason why there's a disproportionate number of Sonic fan games. There's something about the character design and philosophy that you can't really find anywhere else. When creating Sonic the Hedgehog, Yuji Naka wanted to create a game that rewarded replayability. He came up with the idea for Sonic after playing Mario 1-1 multiple times. Sonic games, even to this day, are supposed to be a learning process. You have to play with him multiple times to really have fun. This is another reason why Sonic doesn't really appeal to people who have never played it. This is anecdotal, but I've given Sonic Mania to some of my friends who like Mario even, and they just don't get the appeal. And I think it's because, again, you have to really sink your teeth into the game to enjoy it. And that's just not a philosophy that really bodes well nowadays. It's why games like Smash Bros and Pokemon have been simplified. Sonic's philosophy just doesn't fit well in today's climate. Mario's games, contrarily, are really easy to pick up and play. Basically what I'm trying to say here is that Sonic games are an acquired taste. Therefore, in order to appreciate them, you must first acquire taste. There's some more I could say on this, but I probably should just save that for if I ever talk about Sonic Adventure 2. Thank you all so much for watching. This is by far my longest analysis video, so if you guys enjoy it and want me to do more, let me know. I entertained the idea of Sonic 2 versus Mario 3 and Sonic 3 versus Mario World a while ago, so I would probably end up doing that. This has been Sonic Blackboy, and I'm out. Peace.
Yeah.
Soldier boy, I win it. Why me crack it? Why me roll? Why me crack that soldier boy? That Superman that all. Now why me you crack that soldier? 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 Now what? Soldier boy, I win it.